Hello everyone and welcome back to more of me complaining about Eximus Overguard. Now, this is not part 3 in my series. I'm actually still editing that right now. Originally, I was going to include a comment response section in that video because part 3 is largely going to be exploring and testing and experimenting and directly responding to many of the comments that I received on my previous series of videos. So part of my method of structuring how to discuss everything in that video was organizing all of the comments and seeing how I would respond to them, seeing what things they had in common, where they agreed or disagreed with each other, and seeing how I could use that to structure my experiments and all that other stuff. But I enjoyed a lot of your comments, and I had a lot to say, and I wanted to highlight them all. So this is the comment response video now, and the next one will be a little bit longer for me to edit. So sorry for that, but it will be out when it's done. And let's see what we've got. So I have received some compliments, which are cool. Colin writes, "I agree with everything you said. I got through the star chart till Pluto and then got wrecked. But most of the veterans just say get good. When they got all the best gear, they didn't have to go through this because it wasn't in the game." I'm one of those veterans. This wasn't in the game. I didn't have to do it. Colin, you're right. You're right. I'm sorry. Thank you very much for the comment. Next we have Miguel Cabrera Castro. This needs more recognition. It took me 3 years to even get to start to understand what is going on in some missions, and if it wasn't for friends that helped me with more meta builds, yeah. And that time I was really playing too much because equipment cap. I got myself into decoration, mining, and conservation on free roam maps. And for me, is more fun than going steel path for 30 minutes or an hour. Miguel, hard agree. I hate steel path. It's not interesting. It's not fun. It's EP measurement. Oh, look, it's so tough. It's not tough. You just find a way to cheat or cheese it, and then you just walk through it like it's not there. Let me finish reading your comment. Sorry, Miguel. Not every player needs to be good to have fun, but can't just put those walls that the game has. So note, you played with good parkour and a previous understanding of the game. You also had some mods fully maxed, so for a low mid-player, RIP. Thank you for complimenting my parkour. I never really think it's that good. I'm just kind of like a paranoid jumping frog, and I hop around all over the place. I think it does help me, yeah. And yeah, you caught me. I maxed out mods. I knew at the time that I shouldn't have, because I remember when I was at that level of around just having passed Jupiter or Saturn and being around 12 or 14 MR, most of my mods were shit. I couldn't afford the last couple dots in almost anything. I was like, this isn't worth the payoff when I could max something else out. I was coasting with partially completed mods for quite some time. Heck, even after I hit MR30, I was still, I never really used secondaries, so I never maxed out Hornet Strike until, I think, the end of last year. So, yeah, you absolutely caught me. I made a mistake in my coverage there, which I'd like to point out that Nick over at 2-Star Players, when he did something similar to my videos, he did not make that mistake, and unlike me, he was not a cheap ass. He actually took some mods and partially leveled them up so that he could see what a build would look like with crap gear. So, points to Nick for doing what I was too lazy to. Well done there, Nick. But another thing that Miguel's comment here has got me looking at is he ran into an issue with content, and what did he do? He stopped engaging in the content and just went and was like, well, if I'm not allowed to be here, I'll go back to content that I can be at. Decoration, mining, conservation, free roam maps. Is that really how you want to... Is that the incentive system that Warframe needs right now? Is to like, oh, skill wall, get out. Okay. Yeah, I don't want players who are working their way through to suddenly just hit a cliff and then have to decide if they're gonna read the entire wiki or... Well, this is another thing. Miguel, this is a great comment. This is a really great comment because I have some other friends who were getting into Warframe and they're around that like 12, 14 MR issue, and they run into problems too. What they do is they ask veteran players who they're friends with. They're like, hey, I don't understand this mechanic. Hey, I don't know this, I don't know that. You know, why Miguel and other players have trouble with that? It's because it's not in the game. No one has any experience. So much of this is just play Warframe on one monitor, have the Warframe wiki on the other monitor, or, you know, hope you know somebody or know someone who knows someone who can explain parts to you, and that's annoying in a lot of areas, but if that's going to be a system that just basic enemies, like just having Eximus units anywhere, where all of a sudden now you have to rely on asking veterans for help on understanding how to fight a thing you see every mission, no, that's not what I want either. That's one of the reasons why I'm so mad about some of the balance issues here. But, yeah, no, Miguel, your comment reflects exactly some of the concerns I've had about Warframe. Okay, moving on. Let's see. We've got RXIBot, great video. One thing that I noticed with everybody is the fact that they all play Hammer class. I'm talking DPS. So, I myself like Medic class, but Medic class is not needed in this game whatsoever, and I like to play support. And with the new Eximus being able to blast through Limbo Bubble, ignoring visibility, and doing the same with all other Warframes that literally are the support class, that is where the problem lies with me. So I went from being able to hold down an area that's being overrun for my teammates, down to dying quickly to the Eximus because he's attacking me from outside my bubble, and it's the same with Avara. I usually aid my players by picking them up if they get dropped during turning them invisible and putting the enemies to sleep when they're overwhelming the team. But that is gone now too. So essentially, they're removing the support class of Warframe, and to actually enjoy the game whatsoever anymore, you literally just need to be a hammer. So pick somebody that can hit like Rhino and you're good to go. But if you don't pick somebody who is, if you pick somebody who is support class, then you're not going to go. You're usually down, getting picked up, or dying. Yeah, a lot of the debate that I've seen in YouTube about, you know, support frames is around the argument of CC, of how Eximus units are immune to it, and that's a problem. Shocking, I don't watch that many other YouTubers, but like Nick's coverage with Nick's showed that things like the Chaos Area of Effect still works because everybody's shooting everybody else. So the CC stuff isn't necessarily that bad. What I did find that really bothered me about this is I didn't know that they could just ignore Limbo Bubbles and just be like, well, you're gonna get hit. It's like, okay, DE, fine. So your new super cool special OC villains, do not steal Eximus units, they can just ignore whatever player abilities they want to because it's inconvenient. Cool. Alright, so shoot through invisibility. You don't, just because you're invisible doesn't mean we can't see you and shoot you. Okay, you're in an alternate universe, we're gonna shoot into the alternate universe, kill you that way too. Why not? Here, guess what? Here's my take. Hey, DE, I don't think you went far enough, actually. Why can't they just shoot through Rhino's armor? Iron skin, that shouldn't be real. Just ignore it, just shoot through that. Or, Nova Null Stars, those are cool. The damage reduction, shoot through it. Or Titania, when she's in Razorwing, she gets an evasion bonus. You know what? She's a bright, shiny spot. Why should she have an evasion bonus? We should just... Eximus units can just hit. They don't need to have aim penalties. you know, let's just ignore everybody's defense abilities. You know, why should we pick on the why should we pick on support frames that are squishy that have to use gimmicky stuff? Why don't we screw everyone? You know, let's see how that affects player. Ooh, you know what? Here's a fun one. Here's a real fun one. If we're gonna have Eximus units ignore Warframe's abilities and defenses, have them ignore armor and ignore adaptation. Let's see how veteran players like it if that happens, huh? I hate adaptation because of how prevalent it is, and I still use it myself just because it's such a useful mod. But tell you what, if Eximus units could just shoot through adaptation, I bet you some of these veteran players would start complaining all of a sudden. Oh, look at that. Oh, the thing that we're already good at that the game encourages us to play at the cost of other players is suddenly not doing as well? Well, now we're hurt. I feel like so much of this pushback of, why are people complaining about Eximus units? They're not complaining because the effect of Eximus units has just been to reaffirm all the things that they were already doing as correct. And anyone who plays Warframe any other way is paying for it. It's like, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. This is why I was really angry. I titled a video a bit ago, and I titled it Warframe Get Good or Get Out or something like that. It was half a joke, but it's really how I feel like some of this is going. So let's see what else we got. Kevin Alexander, please stop trying to make it seem like an issue. It's not. The only thing this game has that would make the Eximus an issue for mid or casuals is T1 ISO or arbitrations. No. That's me. My response was no. Kevin Alexander said, for what reason? There are quite a few content creators actively showing that this argument is null. So why continue it? Genuinely, I am curious how you can think these enemies, aside from Nox and Bursa, are a threat. I have actually not discussed Nox or Bursa Eximus units at all, because that's not the problem. Nox and Bursas, you can fight just fine. Now, I told Kevin here that I would be making more content. I would make another video responding to some of this. First off, no, I'm not going to stop making content. I'm not going to stop doing tests and responding to this. I'm not really sure why my subscriber count of like 50 people is such a concern to people that I need to be told to stop. Who's gonna see this? I'm not an important voice here, people. But also, yeah, Nox and Bursas used to be a problem for much lower tier players. Kevin and I have been arguing a little bit in the comments about what early game really constitutes. And a lot of Kevin's comments refer to level 20 Eximus units, and I haven't given a shit about level 20 Eximus units. I've been looking at stuff between 35 and 55, because, like, if we go back a few comments to the one about Sedna, that's what I was worried about. All I care about is that players should be able to get through the star chart. So, Kevin, your first point here. The only thing that this game has that would make the Eximus an issue for mid or casuals is T1 ISO or arbitrations. I am 100% okay with Eximus units in arbitrations being a problem. That's good, actually. I'm fine. Arbitrations, the last couple nodes in the void, or maybe some of the higher tier rifts. Not rifts. Oh shoot, what are they? Where you go crack relics, whatever. I can't remember the name of the mission now. Because I don't care. But yeah, no, that's fine. I agree with you. That's where those should be problems. If they're a problem anywhere before that, like Sedna, they shouldn't be. Players who are running into issues, the players that I've talked to who have had issues with Eximus units, are having issues with them from around like the level of 30 to 35-ish up through like the end of the solar system. So 55. You know, it's particularly, I've heard a lot of complaints about sorties. And I'm not sure that the structure of sorties has aged well with the rest of the mechanics of Warframe. So that might actually be a problem with the way sorties work, more than it is a problem with... But here's the thing. You give players access to sorties halfway through the star chart. Don't let them do sorties if it's... Maybe that content needs to be delayed further. My previous testing, where I was getting my butt kicked on a sortie, was me using... I think I've mentioned this in a comment somewhere else. A couple comments back, someone called me out on using maxed out mods. Yeah, I did. That was kind of like a mid-tier player on their best day with their best gear after grinding and maxing out all their best weapons. And part of that sortie was really fucking miserable. It was just awful. But I'm gonna say that that's okay. Because sorties should present, you know, something of a chance. They should not be impossible, but they should present something of a challenge. So if a sortie is particularly rough, yeah, okay, I'll accept that. But everything from Sedna down up to 20 waves on a defense, or 20 minutes in a survival, or whatever you need to get to rotation C on any of the other endless missions, the game should be accessible for everyone to reach C rotation on any mission in the base star system without having to, you know, go through too much effort. That is my chief complaint. My issue with a lot of this is I think that veteran players are arguing for where the kiddie table should end, where the little players should stay if they're not good enough. And, like, that's shrinking when you push the goal down like that. It's like, well, you know... The whole base solar system, that's for average casual players. That's for people who are not, you know, trying to kick ass and take names. You know what veteran players have? We've got the Zaramon. It's right behind me here. You know what else we have? We have our own star chart. We have the entire steel path. We don't need to take Sedna and the last couple of planets or nodes from the base star system. Just let players have it. Just let players have it. Alright, let's see the next comment here. Binary Commando. There is no few secret formulas to take Overguard down. Let me explain. Imagine an Eximus Grineer Butcher has clone flesh, armor, and Overguard. Remove the Overguard, and he is a slightly beefier Butcher. I'm going to stop right here. Not really. They're just... Eximus units, once their Overguard shield is off, they're nothing. They're just anybody else, and you just knock them on their butt. The unit isn't an issue. The Overguard shield is. Let's continue and see where Commando is going with this. It's a health class just like Clone Flesh, Infested Flesh, etc., and that makes it susceptible to the viral debuff, increasing damage done to health. The only weakness it has is 50% against Void, so if you had a damage boost with Corrosive against that Butcher, you will no longer deal that extra damage against the Overguard and vice versa. Which means if you had a damage penalty with Blast, you'd see a damage increase against Overguard. I'm not sure about this. This could be accurate, I think, actually. But it also doesn't really matter. This is Commando is listing this as a positive, but it's not a positive. This is a penalty. Let me explain why this is a penalty. you teach players that enemies have different health and armor values. In fact, Commando just listed some of these for us. Clone Flash and, I think it's Ferrite Armor for Butchers. No, is it Ferrite? It's Ferrite or Alloy, it doesn't matter. Whatever. These Grineer have Ferrite Armor or Alloy Armor, depending upon what Grineer they are, and then they have Cloned Flesh, which is really weak against Viral, but also then Corpus just have regular flesh, and then they have different kinds of shields, either shields or proto-shields, and then Infested have a couple of health types. But overall, what these things do is they teach you that there are different classes of enemy in each faction that different types of weapons work against. Players can learn this by fighting Corpus and realizing, oh, there's some weapons that work better against MOAs and Bursas than do against the soldier, the actual crewman. That's good. That teaches you to use different damage types against those enemies. Except, Aximus units take that away. So no, you will not see... You would see a damage increase if you were using the wrong damage type against an enemy. But if you were already bringing the wrong damage type against these enemies, you've already made that mistake. That's not a good thing. You've also taken away the reward. So if you learn that magnetic damage is extra powerful against Corpus Shield, and you bring a bunch of magnetic weapons to help you deal with Corpus enemies, well, guess what? All that bonus damage that you would be doing, no, you're not, because it's an Overguard shield, so it's its own health class. Congratulations, all that learning you did, you have now been punished for it. You've presented this as a positive, but it's a bad thing. Okay, so let's see what else we've got here, Commando. Now, there is more to it. Overguard has the same amount of hit points for all units, be it a weak charger like in the video or corrupted heavy gunner, which means that using the same weapon to remove the Overguard of both would lead to identical purge time of the Overguard, assuming that they're the same level. The infested charger in your video is noticeably tankier than the rest because the damage boost you had with the slash damage from the Lieutenant Flux Rifle is no longer a thing against the second health bar Overguard. And also because Overguard is given at a high value, which seems to be on par with Heavy Gunner's amount of health. So you give that to a charger and it'll become really tanky compared to its non-Exodus counterparts. Yes, I'm not actually concerned about the base unit. You are right on all of these points, Commando. But what I would say is the slash damage on my Flux Rifle is failing because apparently, according to... I'll put the picture back up again. According to the rules, the Overguard units receive their armor to reduce the damage of slash procs. That seems really weird, especially because, like you pointed out also, those armor values or those health types don't affect how much damage you're doing to them. So why would they not matter, but then still also provide damage reduction? Answer? Because DE wanted to nerf slash damage against their special boys. Okay, fine. That's not directed at you, Commando, that's me just, like, being frustrated with DE balance choices. But yeah, no, I agree with your second paragraph. This is all good information. TLDR, Overguard is simply a second health bar to Eximus units that doesn't have anything to do with the unit's weaknesses or strengths. Agree, this is the problem. But, for being a health class, it's susceptible to the viral debuff. Yes, that seems to be the way that it was built in. It is like killing two units, one that is only weak to void and doesn't have armor. You say it doesn't have armor, but it still receives that armor benefit against some effects. So, or any type of damage reduction, and the other is your regular unit, although slightly tankier because of Eximus special unit scaling and normally having higher levels. I mean, the comment is helpful, but also kind of a big mess. Like I responded, the end result is players need to design their loadout to fight Overguard first and worry about enemies second. You are absolutely right. Overguard shields are functionally a different enemy that mixes into every other map of every other enemy type you're fighting. So if you go to fight Grineer, you're not fighting Grineer, you're fighting Grineer and Eximus units. If you go to fight Corpus, you're not fighting Corpus, you're fighting Corpus and Eximus units. This is specifically the issue that I have with the way that Eximus works right now. Overguard needs to be susceptible to all the damage types that the base unit is susceptible to. That would help incentivize people to play smarter and play better. If you're going up against Corpus and you're using weapons that are doing damage types that are good against the Corpus, you should be getting rewarded for knowing to do that. But that's not how it goes. So next comment. We are talking to Kevin Alexander again. All right. Your weapon has been forced... your weapon has forced impact and slash procs along with a couple of 200% damage multipliers on top of your red crits. I'm not sure if you noticed, your Flux Rifle was doing around 500 or 600 damage, and the Broken War was doing around 70k to 100k per swing. Yeah, the Broken War is a beauty. I love it. The Eximus shields are all static and scale only with level and damage reduction, not enemy type. Yes, I agree with all those points. Damage reduction is... I've seen some rumors that they might be also getting DR that would help explain some of the weird inconsistencies I've seen with high damage single hit weapons versus higher rate of fire weapons, but that is entirely hearsay. So I'm going to say that yes, all of this is right. In other words, your sword is dealing slash damage, which is a 1.75 damage multiplier on top of the 200% stance multi with red crit, leading to you most likely destroying the shields in one go. But as we were just discussing in a previous post, Overguard is not susceptible to additional damage types, so partially correct. I am not doing extra damage against the enemy based off of their health values. I'm doing a lot of damage, though. I'm doing so much that I don't have to care about the game mechanics. But yeah, this is leading me to red crits destroying the shield in one-ish hits, whereas with a gun with low base damage and high status application, you are only hitting them for around 500 per hit, which is doing damage. Not sure if you realized, but your Flux Damage dealt 1/8 of the Overguard in the initial 30 seconds of the video. Oh no, I did notice, and that was what irritated me. So let's imagine, imagine that you were using one of the best weapons in the game, with some of the best mods available in the game, and you formatted it and potatoed it, and, you know, you're fighting middling level enemies. And you fight one enemy, and you're like, oh man, this is crazy. If I just keep firing for half a minute, I take out a little bit of it. No one should have to stand and shoot one enemy for 4 minutes straight to take down one of their health bars. That's what irritated me. You're right, I was doing damage. It's just that it was not reasonable amounts of damage to be considered effective. And the more Eximus units that you have to deal with, Jesus, imagine how many more enemies would spawn in the 4 minutes it takes you to kill the first one. How many more Eximus units would you have to deal with every 4 minutes? Oh my god, it's... you could... Here's another thought. How many enemies do you kill in 4 minutes in Warframe? Like, just do 5 minutes of a survival sometime, and then book it. How many enemies did you kill in 5 minutes of a survival? Now, consider that instead of all of those enemies that you killed in that mission, you could kill one Eximus unit instead and upset the second one. Do you see why that's a problem? Because that's a problem. That's not at all what we should see. You cannot just shoot at it and treat it as a trash mob like the rest of the enemies in the game. Think of a different approach, such as subsuming silence into your Excalibur and then turning off Eximus abilities, allowing you to go to town on them with the most reckless abandon. I hope this helped at least a little bit. Kevin, it does help. However, it also points out some of the issues with this. Silence is fun. I do love silence. Banshee's a great frame. Here's the thing is, I don't need this advice. Like you saw, I can just take out my Broken War that's got a Riven on it, it's got all these maxed mods, it's got maxed out sacrificial mods. It's a batshit weapon. And I can just be like, I don't want to play this game anymore. Let's skip all the mechanics. Smack, 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 infinite amounts of damage, who cares? And here's the thing is, like, I don't even think my Broken War build is that good. Maybe I think I might be wrong. Maybe my Broken War build is better than I'm giving it credit. But, like, I'm pretty sure that there are players out there, veterans, who look at my Broken War build and they're like, what are you doing? Why do you have 4 dots in the Gladiator Rush mod? Why is your build like this? Why have you done this? And you know what? They're probably right. I'm probably not using that weapon efficiently. But I also don't have to, because I have so many benefits from being so far in the game as a veteran player that I can just turn off the game mechanics I don't like. And that was one of the reasons why I was pointing out how the Broken War was so drastically more powerful as compared to my other weapons. And like the Tenet Flux Rifle, that's kind of one of the best weapons in the game. You wouldn't think that. To be fair, that's kind of my fault too. I don't appreciate just how much of a difference mods make, and when I was leveling that up, my Tenet Flux Rifle was like, not even like half of the mods that were in it. I still had a ways to go on that build. So, that's the real reason why I noticed a problem, is that I was working with partial gear. But here's the thing, is that I was still working with better gear than most players who are normally handling that content would have access to. Most players leveling gear on that content, they're not leveling Tenet Flux Rifles with galvanized mods installed. They're leveling, like, I don't know, a Telos Boltor. Like, these weapons are leagues apart, okay? That's the issue. So where I was playing wasn't really content for me, or at least it's not supposed to be. I was slumming it and goofing off in lower level areas, and I was running into problems, which that tells me that area, for players that are supposed to be there, those players are getting screwed. And that's what those players are saying, is that, hey, when I get to Sedna, I get screwed. We had a comment like that earlier already. I'm like, that's not good. Alright, thank you, Alex. Thank you, Kevin. Well, let's continue on here. What's the next one? From Wolf Saints. It looks like most of the enemies in the game have a weakness to viral. If they have cloned flesh or flesh and heat... if they have cloned flesh or flesh, and heat works on them too, plus infested flesh, then slash works just about anything that's not robotic or shields or armor. Those give it a bit of trouble. If it doesn't proc, then rad for alloy armor, fossilized corrosive for ferroid armor, robotic and magnetic for shields. But then again, when do we really have problems with shields? Lol, since we can just headshot to get past them. Also, I noticed your operator didn't have any shields in the video. Was this taken before the last couple of hotfixes? Wolf Saints, you caught me. Yes, that was the video that you were commenting on. I was using previous recordings from when I had first been testing Overguard, and it was right before the update they gave all the operator buffs. Which those operator buffs, that's potentially a big difference. Now, a couple of comments ago, I went off on a deranged tangent where I was complaining that players who have learned what damage types affect different enemies should be rewarded for using those damage types. Wolf Saints here has just demonstrated a great volume of knowledge about what weapons to use against what enemies. And all of that knowledge is being punished now when Wolf Saints goes and fights Overguard, where Overguard doesn't pay attention to any of those damage values. Shouldn't a player like Wolf Saints, who is aware of all of this detailed information, see a mechanical reward for knowing that information when fighting enemies in the appropriate areas? Thank you, Wolf Saints. We're going to see more comments from you because you've left a lot of great comments on my videos. Alright, moving on. Let's see. Speaking of, again, Wolf Saints on more information about status types. Corrosive and Heat also work on Overguard. They do, I think. I missed this. I'm recording my comment response section right now just after having done like a 16 or 17 test runs of low mod, low damage weapons in the simulacrum so I could get some counts for how long or time to kill on Overguard. And I also, even before this, I did test Heat, and Heat procs do work. Now, this is my fault. I was confused because I misunderstood and misread the graphic for how Overguard shields work. Let's put the Overguard graphic back up. Here's the crazy convoluted list of all these things. As you can see, there's a section here that says, oh, blah, 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 all these different status dots. Those don't work. And then over here on the other side, it says, oh, here are all the things that these are immune to. And it lists the Heat symbol. I'm wrong. I read this wrong. Yes, Overguard does grant immunity to Heat procs, but only the panic effect. Heat procs have a damage over time effect. That is not part of the panic effect. So the damage proc still triggers. They still take heat damage. When I tested it, it was not as fast. The heat proc was still slower to kill the enemy than viral procs were, because viral's just a really extremely good damage type and status effect, and that's why the game's built around it, even if it shouldn't be. Wolf Saints also says it looks like Overguard still takes into account enemies' weaknesses, so we'll have to mod for right elements. I don't know if they do. I don't think they do. Based off of, I haven't had the time to run the numbers or count how many how many seconds to kill it was on each of my different tests, but the Overguard shield did not seem to behave differently on different health values of enemies. So this, combined with a couple of previous comments, Wolf Saints, I'm sorry, I think we're wrong here. I think that Overguard ignores all of those resistances and vulnerabilities, which I think is terrible, because like I said a minute ago on your previous comment, you should be rewarded for the knowledge of the game that you have collected, because you have collected quite a lot of knowledge. Thank you for your comment. So let's see what else we got here. Their design, this is referring to Overguard again. Wolf Saints says, their design so you're supposed to use your operator or void damage to take down the Overguard, but you still just brute force it if you do enough damage. This is true, and I very much do brute force solutions to most of my problems, so you're not wrong. I just watched the part you shooting it in slow motion, and you were damaging the Overguard. You just weren't one-two-shotting it if you're probably used to that before the update. You are correct. This is again, Kevin Alexander called me out on this similarly a minute ago, where he said that yes, I was doing damage. I was doing, like about an eighth of the Overguard in one portion of the video. This is really my fault for saying or claiming that I was doing, air quotes, because I'm not on camera, so you can't see me do the quote thing, no damage. I was doing damage. I was just doing inadequate damage. There was not enough damage to make it viable to fight those enemies. And that's what I showed in other tests later when I used poor gear to try and run different Eximus threats. Eventually, there were situations where it was like, okay, you're just not going to viably kill these enemies with the weapons that you're using. And that was upsetting. I am okay with, to clarify, you're right, not all enemies should just be 1 or 2 shotted. I'm okay with elite units like Noxes and Bombards, or not Bombards, Heavy Gunners, and insert whatever fancy villain you have, like Eximus units. I'm okay with them taking more focus, taking more damage. But the problem is that between standard enemies and Eximus enemies, the range of time to kill cannot be so extreme, and the amount of ammunition that you have to use up to do it cannot be as great as it is if you want this to play well. I would not necessarily be opposed to making Warframe a slower game where you use more ammunition to kill fewer enemies. I want to mention Nick from 2-Star Players again, because Nick and I have had similar views on that in a number of situations. It's like, you know what? Just make them tougher. Make the enemies tougher so we have to work harder on them. The Eximus update here has created a problem because it's done both. It's made the Eximus units dramatically tougher, but it's left the number of enemies on the map the same. They're not all Eximus units, but now you have to do both types of gameplay, because all the other enemies that are still on the map, they're still shooting you. They're still just as dangerous as they were before, but now you have to focus fire down on an extreme threat while you have a huge room full of things trying to kill you. If you want to make Eximus units this tough, DE, make the rest of the enemies that tough also. Or not that tough, but like, bring them all up as well, and then reduce the number of enemies on the map so that you have to worry about cover and movement. But that would be an extreme and dramatic change to the game. It would change it from the fast-paced, jumpy action nonsense that we have to closer to a cover shooter, not explicitly a cover shooter, but to a much slower, more tactical mode of gameplay. While that is interesting, I'm not sure if that's a good idea. But that is the issue that I came across when I was dealing with this. So thank you again for your comment. Let's move to the next one here. All right, and this is from 635574. People who haven't done their testing aren't clear whether the Overguard is just a special health that's only affected by viral procs and blocks mercy, or also has armor applied to it. It's problematic that damage reduction also applies to Overguard. In my opinion, they balanced it wrong. Either make both viral and magnetic apply, or neither, and half the total Overguard. Also, the 50% void vulnerability is pathetic. It needs at least 5 times, so we do have to be using the damage focus school to do damage anywhere comparable to guns. I have touched on this issue a couple times already too, but I 100% agree. And I replied, I said, I think the real problem is that void amps are a somewhat static ability that the DE is trying to balance across a dynamic set of difficulties. Amps just need to be moddable like all other guns. Here is something that I will actually say, okay, that's not the only solution. Yes, I think if you treated amps like weapons, and you had to forma them and mod them, that would be kind of a drag. But if they were just balanced the same as other weapons, then they could be used the same as other weapons, and then this sort of issue wouldn't happen. I did some testing that'll be in the next video that showed that, yeah, amps are great for killing enemies, Eximus enemies up to like level 35 or 45-ish, and after that they just drop off and stop being useful. You know, that's okay, but that's not... and again, yeah, this is just more about the inconsistency that we're seeing in how these different damages apply and how players try to interpret them. I think it is a mess. I think it is confusing, and that is the worst thing that your game mechanic can be. You want your game mechanics to be understandable, and DE, you just don't have that. Alright, let's see what else we got. Okay, another comment from my videos. Mato Wakan says, I don't think you understand the issue here. Eximus are a gear check, not a skill check. This is an important point. Thank you, thank you, Mato, for bringing this up. I'm going to agree with you partially. It is a gear check, because better gear will help you get over it. The whole thing that kicked this off was me using a Tenet Flux rifle and failing. That is great gear. It's not exclusively a gear check. It is a gear check and a skill check. The skill that's being checked is your ability to understand how to configure a loadout for the most effect. The problem is, part of configuring your loadout isn't just what gear you have, it's whether or not you have farmed that gear up to sufficient amounts of forma, or gotten enough endo to max out all the mods that you need for it to work, or even that you've been able to purchase the mods that you need. Some of this is almost pay-to-win territory, honestly. A lot of this gear you could just buy in a number of ways. That's not necessarily a good thing. But also, just having the gear isn't necessarily enough. You still need to know how to check it out. And I think, Meto, if you see this video, feel free to correct me in the comments. I think what you were getting at is you were replying to my criticisms that Eximus units are kind of a get-good pressure, and I was also criticizing the veteran players who are shouting the get-good response at everyone below them who is struggling. The way that phrases, it does sound like a skill check thing, but this is probably me not communicating this clearly. When veteran players are telling everyone else to get good, they think it's a skill situation, that they're telling these players to get better at the game. Well, you know what getting better at Warframe is? It's farming, it's grinding, it's having stuff. Like you said, gear check. So you're not wrong. I am taking issue with the phrasing of get good, because I was like, do the people who are saying get good, do you know what that actually entails? And should we really be gear checking people off of the base star chart? Like, it shouldn't require such an extensive level of modification to get right. That's where I'm at with that. But thank you again for your comment. That is great. Speaking of get good, I saved this one. You might have seen I replied to a couple of Binary Commando comments in the past. Let's go through these ones. Binary Commando says, I don't think you need to design your loadout against Overguard, having viral status, which is omnipresent nowadays. Stop you right there. Viral status, which is omnipresent nowadays. Why is viral status omnipresent? So for one, Commando is saying, you don't have to mod your weapons for viral, because everyone and everything is already doing viral. Commando, this is exactly the complaint that I was raising, that the Eximus units are rewarding veteran players who are already doing the things that make them win, well, the expense is being applied against all of the players beneath them who didn't. So your comment, which you think is disproving me, I mean, I agree with part of what you just said, because what you just said is part of the problem. Viral status is not mandatory, as I explained above. Even when you're using the wrong damage type against a given enemy, let's say using toxic against toxic agents, the damage type will still do work against Overguard just fine. It might seem ludicrous on fodder enemies because of their big EHP boost, but for heavy enemies, Overguard is not even doubling their EHP. I'm going to have to stop here. I have had players who have reported to me that they were screwing around with their gear in the Sanctuary, and they were testing it. You are right. It does not even double their EHP in those cases. For some players, they experience as much as 10 times as much effective health because it takes 10 times as much damage for them to get through it, which is ridiculous. Why? Why is that such a big difference? Why is that something that people are having to deal with? That's a great question that I can't answer. But I do know that when I was fighting Eximus enemies, and any of the videos that I have up so far, you can watch them, you'll see that the actual hit points of the enemy under the shield are paper. They are meaningless. It is me burning through the shield and struggling to get through the shield for them to collapse like a party balloon on a bed of nails. Okay. So, I'd say that you have taken Eximus units... I'd say that you have to take Eximus units seriously, just like you do against heavy ones like Bombard, Nox, Bursa, or against tactical enemies like Nullifiers. You can build against a Nullifier, bringing an Augmented Miter or fast-firing weapon, but you don't have to, just like with Eximus units. Gotta disagree. I had a friend who went to go run one of the open-world sortie missions. And the first objective was, clear the area. She screwed up. She brought the wrong weapon loadout, so her damage against the Eximus unit was almost non-existent. She cleared the whole rest of it, and then had to spend 15 minutes shooting at an Eximus unit to get through its Overguard, because she didn't bring her anti-Eximus loadout. The rest of the mission, she did fine, finished it, no problem. That sucks. That's stupid. If Eximus units were no different than Nullifiers, or Bombards, or Noxes, or Bursas, I would not be complaining about them. I like Noxes and Bursas, and I don't like... No one likes Nullifiers. But, no, they should be brought in line with those other heavy enemies. You're absolutely right. And once they are the same as those other heavy enemies, no one's going to have a complaint against them. But right now they are just a impractical, weird... They don't make sense. It's not an easy thing for players to deal with. Alright. Eximus doing their job isn't a problem at all. They're what the game needed to teach players how to build decently. Let me be blunt here. If you can't handle Eximus, it means you shouldn't be playing at that level. Eximus will happen every mission, so get good. Yep. Thank you, Binary Commando, for making all of my complaints for me. It's like, you say this like you're criticizing my position, but you're just stating the reasons why I have a problem, and you've done a great job. You will face Eximus units every mission. The difficulty in fighting an Eximus unit versus fighting the rest of the enemies in the map should not be such a high difference that you can kill everything else in the game, or in the mission, but that one or two Eximus units, well, that's just going to freaking screw you. No. That's not how you should... That is a bad thing. That is not what you want. Your gear... If your gear shouldn't be working in a mission, it shouldn't be working in that mission. You shouldn't have to add specific enemies that go, oh, because this one unit is here, your gear is too bad and you need to go home to the kiddie table. No. This is my complaint about inconsistent player experience. If your weapons don't work on that Eximus unit, they shouldn't work on the rest of the enemies in that map either. You should feel bad trying to kill everything, not just that one. Be like, oh, this is a high-level area. Not, oh man, I'm breezing... Oh god, I just got hit in the face by an Eximus unit and I can't do any damage to it. No. You should not have that sudden difference in your experience. That's a bad thing. Thank you for your comment, though. Let's see what else we have. Lone Star M says, you should try the Isolation Vault Tier 1 with your build example. Don't make me go to Deimos. No! It sucks to the extreme, getting hammered by Eximus infected solo. You know what? Deimos is an ugly, terrible place, and I'm so sorry that you have to do content on Deimos. I wouldn't wish that on anyone. But you're right, I should use my example build and go do a Tier 1 Isolation Vault, because my argument originally was that players should be able to complete all of the content in the base star chart without, having to go to extremes. And That would be a really good test. Why did you... I'm not going to thank you for your comment, Lone Star M, because I'm going to have to go and play an Isolation Fault now. Why have you done this? Thank you for your feedback, though. Okay, that was all the comments that I was going to respond to right now. If I do have any others, I will mention them as I go through them.